Well, welcome to the Been There, Done That panel discussion. I do want to extend again as well regrets that Mario Lopez could not be with us. He participated in the planning. He was eagerly looking forward to being here and discuss the lessons learned. All of us share a lot of things in common. One, we're all friends. We've all had to deal with the same issue at different periods of time. And that dictates actually whatever you did in 2000 may not have worked in 2010. So I think you're going to get a different perspective from a different time of what worked, what didn't work. And so we all share having worked on that. But again, we're all friends and love being here today to talk about it. I got the honor of being the panel moderator because Colin said, I've been doing this the longest. I think that was a nice way of saying I'm the oldest one. But I tell you, it's an honor to be with this panel as well. We have chosen 4 questions to ask ourselves that I think are questions that we more often hear from folks that want to either tell us how this could be fixed, how it should be fixed, or why didn't you consider this or that? And we're doing that just to tee up the discussion. Because Mario is not with us, I think that will just allow for a little bit more time for questions and answers from you all, which is the most important thing. And we look forward to that. With that, any opening comments from my colleagues? Y'all ready to go?
Let's go.
All right, so the very first one, and it was alluded to by the previous panel, and I'm so thankful about the comments that were made, many of which I agree with, some of which I take issue with, but that's just the nature of water. I think you're gonna see that we will take issue with whatever we say as well. But one of the issues that comes up always when we're discussing the 1944 treaty and the devastating impacts that it has on the users, and in particular, I think what resonated with me with the first panel is we have not yet learned how to live within our means when it comes to water. We're not putting water to sustainable use. That to me was the overarching issue that came across in the first panel. I think you all would probably agree as well. So one of the issues that comes up is why is it that we are always talking about Mexico's not complying with the 44 treaty? What's the problem? And the first question for the panelists is, should the 1944 treaty be reopened? Bobby, I'll start with you.
Fun problem to start with, and I will emphatically and immediately give a qualified yes. Yes, maybe. I think there's clear need to revisit topics and issues under the treaty. Reopening is a very loaded term. It's a loaded phrase, and it brings in questions of does the Mexican Congress, does the U.S. Senate find a new legal basis to assert involvement in the treaty moving forward? If it's substantially amended beyond where it has been up until now. I think the minutes are powerful tools that have been demonstrated in the past to really be able to transform and evolve the treaty and put very specific new teeth in. And I think we've seen in the Colorado Basin how much that treaty can really change and evolve and offer new tools over time simply through the minute structure that preserves the marriage, the difficult relationship of only needing a unanimous agreement out of the party of decision, two decision makers who really reflect Washington, D.C. and Mexico City. I think I've seen directly in my perspective how that constrains a lot of this decision making. So I think discussion of reopening the treaty is worthwhile because that will help bring awareness and increase pressure to discuss the necessary issues. But likely, I think the best place to do that is in a box, in a compartment, a minute, perhaps a new sub-agreement, a new subsidiary agreement that complements the treaty. I don't know that reopening the treaty, reaching that threshold would be something that either country or both would like. I'm sure the U.S. senators would all want to have more of a say, but where our community has the ability with only needing to change 2 decision makers' minds, that's a really powerful opportunity. It comes with a really high cost of needing to get unanimity with only 2 parties.
Thank you. Maria-Elena, my neighbor, by the way.
Yes, we are literally neighbors. So one of the beautiful things about IBWC, the International Boundary and Water Commission, is that it's not located in Washington, DC. It's located at ground zero in the El Paso Juarez area. The other thing that I think is really amazing about this organization is around the world, there are about 300 surface water bodies that cross international borders, transboundary watersheds. And less than half have any sort of institutional framework, whether it be just an MOU or an actual agency like what the IBWC is. And IBWC, as well as the Commission on the Danube, are considered like the gold standard. The Commission on the Danube River is like 9 countries that take water from that. My point is with that is that if I were queen for a day and I got to just dictate what could be fixed in the 1944 water treaty, I say, let's go for it. Let's open it up. But it's not that way, right? There's a lot of interest and a lot of interest of the federal government that's in Washington, D.C. and in Mexico City, which is so far from the issue, which is so far, it doesn't represent the population, the culture, what the region is going through. And my opinion is, I think the answer on how we move forward is all amongst this group here and the convening power that Texas Water Foundation has now established over two of these types of forums. So I'd be terrified of letting Washington, D.C. open up the treaty to renegotiation, right? How equal was our Congress and feds to do that? We don't. And so one of the things, the experiences that I have gotten being at the IBWC Commission and the IBWC Commissioner is what I see on the Colorado River. And on the Colorado River, the federal government has told the 7 states, figure it out. And I'm giving you until a certain day to figure it out. If you can't figure it out, then I'm going to just put down sanctions and reductions. That's it, right? And so that's one piece. So I think that's really important. But this place is a little different because it's 2 countries. And 2 countries, Mexico is one sovereign country and the United States is another sovereign country. And we have to depend on each other. And up until recently, because I can say this now, Madeline Albright, the ultimate diplomat in my view, have said that there's only two tools you have for incentivizing a country to do something. It's incentives or sanctions. Now, before I would have said on the sanctions side, it would have been trade tariffs and military force. Well, I don't know. I can no longer say that's not a tool that the United States is willing to use anymore because it seems like they're using it now. But the whole point is that I think that there is an ability, we gain more from incentives and working together and really advancing collaboration and cooperation. And let me tell you, and my peeps over there, my farmer peeps over there, they are tired. They're tired of this, and I don't blame them. This issue has been a reoccurring issue for over 25 years, since the first time Mexico did not meet its 5-year commitment in the 1992-97 5-year cycle. And of the last now 8 cycles, they've only met their requirements. They've had misses or near misses every single cycle except for the 3-year cycle where Hurricane Alex came in. So my point is, I know I'm getting kind of long-winded here, is that I think that the farmers deserve resiliency, deserve certainty. As Sonny Hinojosa, I don't see him there. Here, they are at the bottom of the straw, the bottom of the watershed. They are the last straw. I do want to commend Mario Mata, who spoke on the first panel. It takes a lot of courage to come up and speak on this panel, especially if you're from the other country or from Mexico. But I think there is a path forward, and I think without reopening the full treaty, I think there is a path forward where we can use the minutes. But there are things that we have to ensure that we all agree to as the basic premise of how to do that. Because what we do know right now is that the status quo is not working.
Of course, I have a little bit of a different view, but I do agree with certain things. I think the minutes by themselves are a great tool. I think they have helped. I think they have given latitude to the implementation of the treaty that we have not explored as deeply as we should. 234 certainly comes to mind. I think we've also have witnessed, and the first panel talked about, we need to talk to each other plainly. We need to regain trust. And I think that that's the biggest reason why I am opposed to reopening the treaty. I've been asked this question a lot of times, and my answer has always been the same. There's nothing wrong with the treaty. What's wrong with the treaty is a commitment or a lack of commitment to comply. And until that is addressed, then how can you honestly open up the document on how you're going to manage it going forward? Are there problems with the treaty? Yes. Did we sign the treaty when the basin was wetter and we considered that normal? And now we realize that was a mistake? Yeah. But again, in my view, we first need to see a demonstration of a willingness to comply before we literally open up the treaty. And I've been consistent on that position. Having said that, I have seen the power of talking. I have seen the power of good faith negotiation. We have been successful. You mentioned the deficit that I had to deal with, 92 to 97, then 97 to 2002. And then it went over to a third cycle, which it was never intended in the treaty. Thus my point. We were able to get all of our water back then, and we did it through negotiation and minutes, some of which, again, we wish we wouldn't have entered into. Minute 309, in particular, I think ended up hurting trust more than helping anything. And so I think I'm with Rosario in the first panel, and I said it last night during the welcome, hablando se entiende la gente, we need to do more talking. I can guess that Mario's opinion would be somewhat in line with mine. I'm not going to put words in his mouth, but I know how he thinks, and I know how he negotiated, and I know that he was always committed to regaining trust. So I'll leave it at that. One of the big issues with the treaty is what it says and what we read and what we want to interpret. And the biggest problem is Mexico has an out of not delivering only if the basin is in extraordinary drought conditions. You saw slides this morning of extraordinary drought conditions in Chihuahua in 2022. I could show the exact same map in Texas in 2011. We know what extraordinary drought looks like, but it's not defined. And because it isn't defined, it becomes a problem. And it becomes also an excuse for not complying. We'll call a drought extraordinary just to not comply, or because we want to bet on the weather. I think that is one area where we got it wrong in the treaty. So how do you all feel about doing a minute or having discussions just on defining extraordinary drought? And we'll go backwards this time. Maria-Elena, you go first. Sorry.
No, and so I'm going to draw again just to add a layer of additional information, my experience on the Colorado River. So the treaty includes two rivers, the Colorado and the Rio Grande. On the Colorado, it's an annual delivery. It's very clear. And the reason it's an annual delivery is because it's based on snowpack. And and so you get snowpack every year, you get runoff every year. On the Rio Grande, it's a 5-year cycle because it's based on precipitation, and it was recognized at that time that precipitation didn't necessarily fill up the reservoirs every year. But one of the things that I see happening on the Colorado that I think is very germane to this region is on the Colorado River, we're no longer talking about drought. We're talking about aridification. And aridification is permanent. It's not like cyclical, like highs and lows, right? And so on the Colorado River, it's a 16.5 million acre feet of water that's shared amongst 7 states and Mexico. And right now they're talking about going down to at most 11 million. And so looking at 20 and 30% reductions is really important for them to share in the shortage. Unlike the Rio Grande, that part of the treaty has the term of extraordinary drought, but also allows for what they call shortage sharing, where every state takes less that 1 year and you never get it back. It's gone forever in that year, okay? In this case, in the Rio Grande, we don't have in the treaty the ability for shortage sharing. What we do have is just that definition of extraordinary drought. What I do feel that looking and exploring extraordinary drought, again, if I were queen for a day, how would I want to use that clause, is that now that for the first time during my tenure, we actually built a binational water model. So on the Bureau of Reclamation side, they have decades of science. They are like buku rich on the science side, and we're buku poor on the science side for the Rio Grande, for equipment on down, right? So what Samuel shared is like the first time. It's like a glory moment for me to see that somebody is starting to look at that data. And I think we need to do more of that on the Rio Grande so that we have more of an ability to define what is extraordinary drought, and recognizing that the treaty, we can't be afraid of it, because the treaty on the Rio Grande is different from what's happening on Colorado River, and we have to work within those confines of what extraordinary drought is. And for me, is looking at what's in the basin every year and living within our means. I love that. That's going to be the lingo moving forward. Let's live within our means.
Karen likes that. Bobby?
I will gently push back on there's nothing wrong with the treaty, because I think that difference between the Colorado Basin side and the Rio Grande side has really actually hurt us more than it's helped us, because we've been so, as Texans, so pulled into the mindset of wanting to see this contract honored, this obligation that's delineated. And that is, unfortunately, I think, a miss, because we're seeing in the wake of how much we missed the mark on a number of different predictions from 1943, 1944 until today, and many surprises in what vibrant economic potential our river basin has and holds, and still should be able to realize. We need to shift in our mind, shift thinking out of this is a contract that we need to insist and fight on being honored, and we need to instead recognize that there needs to just simply be a shared agreement, a shared compact, a fair share of all of that water. Living within our means taking the rainfall that happened in 1 year in part of the basin and trying to ensure that all of the river users felt some benefit from it, felt that they received a fair piece of that. And they will, I think, in the dry years, see and defend and be more comfortable with the cuts that they had to take, knowing that other users up and down the river basin took cuts as well. That, I think, really is complicated and frustrating if our blinders are focused on a number. Our blinders are focused on an amount, and we're coming back year after year wanting to see that number restored. Frankly, a eventual share of what's owed is worth less, I think, to Texas farmers than a fair share today and tomorrow and the next day. Every day that they can count on a concise annual commitment and annual attempt to make good on that commitment for Mexico, rather than just a hanging 5-year calculation that maybe the hurricanes pull us out of it. That therein is where the peril is.
I agree with you, and I want to commend both of you in particular, because we dealt with this issue when I was water master, and I was involved in treaty issues. And we felt that we probably should define extraordinary drought, but really what we did not recognize is what you just said, Bob. And you too, Maria-Elena, we weren't sharing the actual conditions of the river. And you guys advanced that greatly during your tenure, and I commend you for that. I do want to echo, though, what I heard you say in your response, is all of us, if we're going to do a fair share, and we're gonna share this data, that needs to come also with a backdrop of there is a commitment. So it can no longer be, we'll share the data, but whatever falls in Boquilla is for that district. No, whatever fell in Boquilla is for the basin, including that district. Whatever falls in Amistad is for the basin. Whatever falls in Cuchillo is for the basin, but also for that area. And so the recognition that sharing the data, but also allocating it in accordance to the treaty, I think is more beneficial than spending time trying to define an undefined term. So I think we're in agreement there.
Can I ask a
Yes, of
little bit
course.
to that? Because it's really interesting when I would have meetings on the Colorado River and the Rio Grande. On the Colorado River, you have, I think the 7 states are all fighting, but they're like in total harmony with Mexico. They actually get along better with Mexico than they do with themselves. And I think one of the issues that I really think is helpful is the fact that sharing that opportunity and sharing in times of plenty is really important. And this is where Mexico sees themselves differently. Now, they're at the bottom of the straw here, right? They're at the bottom of the straw. So it's really interesting to me to see how they see themselves. They see, before there was a time where they would say, the United States, I don't care how you manage your water, just give me my 1.5 million acre feet of water per year. Just give it to me. I don't care. But because of the science and because of the dialogue and it took, and I went back to when this started, when this type of dialogue started. Can anybody here in the audience take a guess? Dr. Eden.
1920.
Maybe, right? But it was formalized between the two countries in Minute 306, which was signed in 2000. It was called the Framework for Conceptual Study. That means they were probably talking about it 20 years before that, recognizing that this was coming, because when you sign the minute, there's a lot of discussion before you get to that point, right? And so my point is that where they're at now, after that, they had Minute 306, in 2000, Minute 317, in 2010, Minute 319, in 2012, Minute 323, in 2017, Minute 338, one that I had this one to sign in 2024. This was a whole series of minutes of collaboration and investment in Mexico so that they could take less water. And I guess my point is, and I absolutely love the comment that Samuel made about if you're pointing the finger, 3 fingers are pointed back at you, right? That we are all in this together. And I think that is a really great example that is starting to replicate itself here in Texas and Chihuahua and Tamaulipas, is getting everybody in the room. And it's funny because one of the things that Commissioner Janeca, just before he left his position, said, he goes, you know what? We as states need to start doing our own talking, without the feds present, right? And now that I'm not IBWC commissioner, I can say, you go and do it. And I think that needs to advance.
I will remind all of us, including myself, we do have translation going on, and we need to give them time to catch up. So if you see us slowing down a little bit between questions and answer, is for the benefit of the translators. I think we're good. All right. I think we've already opened up this discussion in part of our responses, but it merits more in-depth discussion. It certainly impacted the decisions I made when I had decisions to make, and I assume it also impacted the decisions you all had to make when it was your turn. Sunny Hinojosa this morning said that they have gone through 3 cycles, 3 years of no water, and the guarantee right now is they're going to go to a 4. Those are damages that you cannot recoup. When a farmer loses a crop, he has lost his year. Doesn't matter that you comply the following year. It may help him that year, but it will not make up for the losses that have already been incurred. And I think we need to recognize that. And it impacted, and I know we're going to get into the San Juan, so we might as well throw it in right now as well. It impacted the decisions I made on how to utilize the San Juan, because I was seeing real world impacts now. I was seeing districts going out and issuing 180-day notices that they were going to run out of water. I was seeing cities looking at having to purchase push water, a term we created back then, 2002, I believe. We did that. And so I've always felt that getting something is better than complaining about getting nothing. And so with that in mind, how can we better utilize the basin? And what's your position on are even interim deliveries better than no deliveries or betting on the weather? Bobby, we'll go with you.
I think it's really worth all stepping out of our comfort zone and trying to reconsider how we can benefit from rethinking approaching river operations. Top to bottom of the basin, and San Juan, as a water supply as a source, as an opportunity for shifting how we operationalize and give some measure of predictability to our process. I think that offers potential. There is real challenge ahead. And I'm very sensitive looking for, I know Dr. Kathy Alexander at least is in our audience today from TCEQ, and that's an uncomfortable large portion of all of the hydrology experience at our agency. We're expanding it, but at my former agency, but the complexity and the complication of trying to account for water deliveries and credit them in the treaty where they can't be captured and saved and retained. It is simply a less useful water delivery, and incorporating that value disconnect. It will always rankle U.S. users, Texas users, to think that we're honoring credit under the treaty for any deliveries of San Juan water. And to some extent, that is a very valid viewpoint because it presents a higher administrative, a higher organizational cost, if nothing else, for the TCQ as the water master to allocate and connect the users. That said, there is a year-round consistent municipal demand that could be satisfied, could be matched up, could be given, and an attempt really needs to be looked at and made to give Mexico a year-round steady need, because as I understand it, their water delivery process really always wanted from the United States, from Texas. But what rate can we just open up? The U.S. system entirely operates in a different demand delivery-based form where the users command the water delivery process. The users say, I need this amount of water at this point in the river, at this point in time. And TCQ works to facilitate that. Incorporating San Juan water into that process for credit really offers a different ramp curve. But if we can get far enough out where we're committing to predictions and values and figure out how to fairly share the risk built in, where if rainfall comes anywhere along that long stretch of river that San Juan deliveries may be flowing along, if rain materializes, we see precipitation, the demand for that flow may be relieved by rainfall further down in the basin. And so we're all bringing on a risk of waters going to the Gulf. That action is something that Mexico, we know, will need to undertake year-round as they're managing their flood infrastructure, the reservoir, being ready for the storm season, ensuring that there is room, that there's potential. And so looking at it as a sub-agreement, something to try to negotiate what San Juan, and I would really encourage our colleagues from Mexico to rethink what value they may be willing to attach to San Juan water. I think having a different credit or a different rate, having deliveries of San Juan water coming in at a different 2-to-1 or 3-to-1 amount in terms of what credit received, or if it can be used for something like environmental flows, that I think offers real potential in unlocking the different public perceptions around how much that is a fair deal or not. And the simple fact that in living memory, that water used to flow in reasonably large quantities and used to get doled out for no cost. It was free. It was extra water for our users, our farmers to use. It's perfectly understandable how viscerally upsetting and offensive it really is for them now to be charged, to see their water accounts going down. And there's an undeniable benefit where you can have savings that you realize up in that basin. There's an undeniable impact. Having less water flow from Amistad or Falcon means that there is less water moving between those 2 points, and everyone else would benefit from that, incidental to the use along the way, including the environment, including the ground flow interactions. That's going to be complicated by finding a solution in more use of San Juan water and being honest about what those secondary and tertiary impacts really are and what they mean for all of our affected stakeholders is the real path forward to building a usable solution.
Thank you. So we're gonna wait. We're good? I think we're switching. Hold on. Okay, we're trying to be very nice. All right, Maria-Elena, your turn.
So, the couple things on water deliveries with regards to other sources, or just thinking about the basin, not just with the 6 tributaries and why San Juan is being brought in. So when we looked at the data, when I was at IBWC, the Conchos had much more variability as far as what precipitation was generated and what was captured in those reservoirs. The San Juan had actually more opportunities for being filled and have more excess flows or flows available for the Mexican government to use. Now, how they use that water is strictly the Mexican government's decision, because in Mexico, all the water rights are owned by the federal government, and so it's really up to them if they want to provide X water or Y water, and so we rely on them for that. Given that, there is engineering issues or structural issues with San Juan water, physical structural issues with San Juan waters that I believe can be engineered with solutions so that we're able to store it on the United States site, so that we're able to fairly distribute it to the irrigation districts on the Tamaulipas side, which is another issue. And these are things that I think really need to be addressed. And it's kind of funny because I'm an engineer. Oh, by the way, I work with Black and Beach now, so come talk to me now. And I think that given that, and this is where we can find engineer solutions, but there's a lack of trust where on the Colorado River, again, bringing in my Colorado River experience, the United States government made investments of about $100 million into technification of the irrigation districts, lining of canals, replacement of gates over like a 10-year period. They did a whole restoration site, and I know we'll be talking about that in another panel. But my point is that Brownsville Weir, we've talked about that, many times before. Those are engineering solutions that could give us more opportunity. If San Juan water was able to be stored, that would be sufficient. That would be able to address about 84% of the users downstream of the confluence. Because most of the users are downstream of that confluence. We just don't have a way to store it. And so I guess my point is that what Bobby was talking about here was the fact that, one, we can't store it, so we can't turn it off when it's raining quickly. We cannot turn it off when we're getting too much water coming in. But I think that definitely it's going to have to be a tool in the toolbox moving forward. And I think both countries need to resolve issues, whether management issues, infrastructure issues, and I think it would behoove them to do that.
So a couple of reactions to that, because we managed to be able to work within this framework back then. The first time we accepted San Juan water, we gave it away as no charge. And then the users upstream properly complaining, wait a minute, the deficit is to Texas, and we're not benefiting from this. And so we came up with how to still take advantage of the San Juan water, but also extend the benefits of basin. One of the things that I think all of us can agree is the most valuable water you can have in the basin is in the upper reservoir, because it gives you the biggest latitudes. If I can satisfy demand downstream with water that is downstream that I did not have to release, I am creating water in the reservoir. We did that back then, but it was also a negotiating point, and I think that that is what's missing in the discussion now. We were sitting in a room in 2005 trying to work out how we get 717,000 acre feet paid. We were short about 300,000 acre feet. San Juan was a face-saving move, no question. But you know what it also meant? You heard today from the previous panel that to have an adequate irrigation in the valley, you need 500,000 acre feet a year. You know how much water? No, 500,000.
Okay.
Yeah, 500,000. 1 million would be a little over the north. Okay? Actually, about 700,000 is about, on average, a really good irrigation season. You know how much water we were able to use out of the San Juan that 1 year? 260,000 acre feet of that. Did it benefit the users here? Absolutely. Did it benefit the system? Absolutely. Did it create a corresponding credit in the upper basins where all of the other users could benefit from? Absolutely. What was the best part of doing it? It got Mexico to agree to a commitment that they honored. That, to me, was worth the entire gamble that we took. But we built in, you're right, and I have to manage the river for a long time. When it rains, the river does what the river's gonna do. We managed it, and Mexico even agreed that in periods of excess, unpredicted flow, there would be no credit. You know how many times we had to do that? Maybe a handful of days. It's not an excuse not to do it. Is that the right solution today? I don't know. It was the right solution then. But I think the moral of it, though, is why is it that in other basins, we look at a basin-wide management, and we're not doing that here? The Brazos River, when I was commissioner, the system-wide permit was up. What did the Brazos River Authority do? It allowed itself, it asked the TCP to authorize better utilization of waters downstream so that the entire system was protected. It worked there. We thought it was a great idea. Guess what? It's a great idea in every basin. We should be looking at it.
I want to add something to that.
We're a little bit on time, but you can on the next question.
Okay.
So the next question, and I'm going to see my friend, the interpreter, is good. We're good. Now we're going to be king and queen for a day, and you're going to be the first one answering, Maria-Elena.
Okay.
So you're queen for the day, but try to touch on this. We got about 15 minutes left, and we do want to leave every time for questions from the audience. How could coordination of binational, federal, state, and local funding accelerate solutions? I would go beyond funding just in operations of the basin. What are your thoughts on that? You get to be queen for a day and roll in what you were saying.
Oh, yeah, this is perfect because this is actually what I wanted to add to this. Okay, so we talked about 700,000 acre feet needed for agriculture,
Yes.
right? And then you add on top of that municipal use. And then, of course, we've got Nuevo Laredo. So along the river, we're talking about 1.3 million acre feet of water to 1.5 million acre feet of water that's needed for all of these regions, right? For all of these communities, they're farming, having a nice farming. And so when we think that if we were to get the 350,000 acre feet of water from Mexico, that would solve the issue. And Sunny brought it up. This was very legacy for me when I was IBWCs. I wanted to see what was happening to the basin, but I could only see it from the perspective of the gauging stations that were on the river. So as compared to the 1980s, the US side tributaries and unmeasured flows, which was interesting because Samuel's data showed the same thing, was that unmeasured flow is groundwater, it's precipitation. Unmeasured flows dropped 33%. That's 650,000 acre feet of water that is less in the basin as compared to the 1980s. And about half of that is from unmeasured flows, precipitation, groundwater. And for me, what does that attribute to? And this is something I saw in the Colorado River. The Colorado River, we're talking aridification. The number one problem with the Colorado River was not drought, but was an increase in temperature. The increase in temperature made the soils hotter. So we had average snowpack one year, 30% of the expected runoff one year, 60% of the expected runoff the next year. What happened to all that runoff? The temperature. The temperature made plants grow because it got hotter, and the temperature, the plants grew longer periods, more evapotranspiration, you had more evaporation, you had warmer soils, so you had more infiltration, so you had less water going into the Colorado River, and you had the winds blowing the snow in a different direction. And we saw that with the LA fires. The same thing is happening on the Rio Grande. The temperature is causing this aridification. So, getting to your question, if I were queen for a day, I think we need to continue working in parallel tracks. One is we have to have a common vision that's based on science. That common vision has to recognize that there's aridification, there's just gonna be less water to share. There may be the same amount of rain as what Samuel said, but it's not making it to the basin, right? We are in this together, hydrodiplomacy. That's gotta be a really important piece. Science, we have to invest in science. To me, when I got to the IBWC and I saw what was being done on the Rio Grande versus the Colorado River, I thought this is unconscionable. This is unconscionable that we do not understand what's happening in our basin. And all of you guys collectively, oh my God, I hope you're not recording me. All of you guys collectively need to ask for the funding for that science so that we know we cannot manage what we cannot measure. I mean, that's like, I'm an MBA. If you, all of you finance people out there, you guys know that's like rule number one. And then the fourth thing, one thing that I did, and you guys need to continue asking for this, is I made the role of civil society important to me. I met with angry farmers, angry surfers on the West Coast, angry tribes people in the Rio Grande. And one thing that I learned from that process, let me tell you, it was terrifying going into with like angry farmers, going into a room of angry farmers, was that I needed to listen. I needed to come from a place of empathy and acknowledge that what was happening was real and that I needed to find solutions, and I needed to thank them to have the courage to do this. I call this my acronym LAST. But my point is that we collectively need to work on those four fronts, and geography is not going to change. We are neighbors. And I loved Chairman Pop's comment that we are neighbors, and she really did a great job of emphasizing that.
Bobby?
Briefly, King for Dad, I just want perfect data. I think having a real complete data set for the entire basin, that means all the way up to the headwaters of the Pecos, the Devils, and all the tributaries on both sides of the river, that gives us the real tools to identify the path out, and we can bring trust into that, and having an idea of a concept of a fair share of all the waters in the basin and a full understanding of that gives us a lot of opportunity. I know that the implications from the discussion in the first panel were really exciting, and hearing from not just Samuel, but Dr. Rosario Sanchez about the groundwater impacts and implications. I know that the PCQ is deep in all of the stakeholders, all of them. It's a binational study, but there's a lot of interesting feedback already from the salinity study that has been explored just in the lower Rio Grande, where there's periods of high salinity coming into the water that apparently is coming in from simple high precipitation groundwater contact, the hyper salty soil that the river sits on and rides along then becomes hypercharged and how that soil moves into the water itself. And so there may be, in fact, some stretches of the river where, for salinity's sake, we want to lower that groundwater level. We may discover in time the net positive was really to keep flow, keep supply, keeping a higher contact, eventually clearing out the hypersaltiness would be the desirable end goal. But until we get to that level of discrete understanding and how that functions differently over every one of those shared binational aquifers that cross the boundary under the basin, we're not really going to know what we're doing, whether that's helping, hurting, or how it's adding other complications we may not be aware of, just in terms of that dryness and that question of recharge.
We're good. Okay, last comment, and then we're going to open it up for questions from the audience. My understanding is we don't have any digital questions yet. So you all get prepared, raise your hand when you're going to have a question, and Sarah will run the microphone over to you. I'm going to be really brief on my thoughts of this. If I'm king for the day, two things. One, I'm going to echo what Maria-Elena said, but I'm going to be a little bit more blunt. Quit treating the Rio Grande Valley as a ugly stepchild. When you compare the federal government investment and attention between the Colorado and the Rio Grande, it is shameful, absolutely shameful. And so that needs to end. Maria-Elena and I go to the Colorado River Water Users Association conference every year. It is, to me, the best conference in the country.
No, this one is.
Okay, this one is now. Okay, there you go. This one is now. It is really good because of the level of sophistication and maturity of the discussions. But that has been facilitated by federal government from both sides investing in that basin. That needs to occur in the Rio Grande. Second part of my position on this goes back to an answer that Dr. Eaton gave. You asked, how long have we been thinking about it? And you really brought it up to like, it just happened. Dr. Eaton said, probably before 1920. Sorry, Maria-Elena, Dr. Eaton is correct.
I'm sure he is.
Yeah, he is. One, I like him too. So if he's a professor, I'm not going to correct a professor. But he is correct because, this came up in the first panel. As well in the response that was given. We need to understand history. I love country western music, and one of my most favorite refrains is, you can't know where you're going if you don't know where you've been. How did we get here? That's where Dr. Eaton is correct. We got here because we first did an agreement with Mexico on how to share the upper Rio Grande. That was the first bargain that was struck. And that led to discussions very quickly on how do we share the other two major rivers. Those linkages you cannot separate them in discussions about, no, that was just thrown into that document because it was convenient. No, it all happened for a reason. We did the agreement on the upper Rio Grande, and we committed to give to Mexico a certain amount of water at once. And then we started discussions about how are we going to share the Colorado? How are we going to share the Rio Grande? I think that the U.S. has failed in strengthening the linkages that were created in the 44, where we committed to give a certain amount of water out of the Colorado, and the bargain was, in return, a certain amount of water was to be delivered to the Rio Grande. I've always been in favor of taking the position of linking those deliveries. Nothing has changed my mind. I realize that is not going to sit well with some folks here. I promise you that my friends from the Colorado Basin states hated me when I took that position. But it's this area that I need to protect. I'm going to close with that. Now we're going to open up for questions from the audience as well. Just wait a second, make sure that we're good. We are good. Okay, Sarah, yours.
Carlos gets the award, the most conscientious moderator. Thank you for doing that. Can we get a big round of applause? Are there questions from the audience? Karen.
Yeah, thank you. These are some really intriguing ideas. I have so many thoughts about all of them, but I wanted to go back to something that that you all brought up, which was, I heard you all say, that you tend to not want to reopen the treaty, which I agree with. I think it would open a can of worms in many different ways, but you also talked about, the importance of the minute process and what can be done there. So now that, none of you are actually involved in that, and you see the benefits of it and what can be accomplished, what are the challenges to actually doing some of the ideas that you talked about, particularly the sharing of the pain, which I think is a really intriguing idea, in times of plenty and in times of less. And so if that could be accomplished through the minute process, and I think it probably could, what are the challenges to being able to do that? And how do you see them being overcome?
I'll go first real quick, because I love the question. We ended the last panel with, what do you see for hope? I see a lot of hope here, actually, on your question. Because I can tell you that when Mario Lopez, who again couldn't be with us today, and he regrets that, when he and I were dealing with the issue, we kind of thought, wouldn't it be neat if we could agree on, we will share data, and that will be the basis for minutes. They accomplished that. And I think we need to continue down that path. I'll pass it on to you.
I think that one of the challenges, and I've worked in Mexico for a very long time, is right now, I see a huge separation in voice with Mexican stakeholders and the federal government. I see, so voice and support. So on the Mexican side, and again, I remember Mario Mata, I know he walked out for a minute, so I can say it now. One of the things that he struggles with is that his irrigation districts did not grow because of Mario Mata. This is like decades of growth, right? And one of the things is like, he mentioned was, we don't have a way to constrain that growth. We don't have, so there's a lot of institutional things that need to be done in Mexico from a social aspect to ensure that the federal government does not have fear in making these decisions. So another aspect is investment in technification and investing in those agriculture. So when you reduce water consumption, those rights cannot be perpetual. They have to be clawed back, right? Otherwise, you're just gonna have more water consumption or more growth because of the fact that you have these water consumption reductions. And when there's more water, when you're more efficient, you're gonna wanna use that efficiency elsewhere, right? So I really think that we have a great opportunity to work with our partners in Mexico and helping them socialize some of these elements. I think there's a real problem because these people need to live. They need to grow they need to live just like they do on the Mexican side. And unfortunately, on the US side, and unfortunately on the Mexican side, they do not have the same social support system, like from funds that would help, the farmers survive, no agriculture for you.
Bobby?
I think the path forward is politically impossible from the perspective of both Washington, D.C. and Mexico City. And so the challenge is finding the courage to carve a new path. Forget that door, and we can all get together and we can talk about what difficult path forward we all live with. We can take that to the doorstep of the capitals in our two countries. And I think that's a really positive route to follow.
We have a question here, and then we're going to go to Quiroga as well. So we'll take two more, and then we'll inspire you to ask more questions over lunch. I guess.
Well, thank you very much to the panel. My name is Dante Galeazzi of the Texas International Produce Association. I know at least two of the three are familiar with me. But on this same topic, thinking forward, thinking about the political challenges that Bobby alluded to just now and those difficulties. One of the proposals out there is tying the treaty and its performance to USMCA and making that part of really the entire relationship for North America. I mean, I think water is a resource that's large enough that it should be part of it. The entire chapter from environmental law. But I'd love to hear your guys' opinions on thoughts on should it be tied together and why it hasn't been explored before?
Excellent question. It has been linked before. It was an attempt to link it to NAFTA.
Hold on.
Yep. Oh, sorry.
To continue,
So much for being conscientious.
Got inspired.
Yeah. There was an attempt to lift it, to link it to NAFTA, and that was a court process. And it did not progress, but it was not without really positive results. One of the reasons we were successful in the early 2000s is because as the State Department accused me and others, we became a bilateral irritant. Well, I tell you what, we should take pride in having been a bilateral irritant, because that's what it takes, and I think that that's at the heart of your question. President Bush would go with meetings with President Fox, and President Bush would walk in with a bottle of water, and he said, "You owe me." I saw that. That's when you become a bilateral irritant. And so, yeah, I think there's a place for it. Diplomatically, I didn't mind being a bilateral irritant, but yeah, there's a place for it.
And I would agree. I will tell you, Dante, that San Diego is chomping at the bit as well, because of the pollution issues coming from the Tijuana region. And so is Arizona because of the pollution issues in Nogales, right? So what this is telling me is that there's a lot of bilateral irritants going on right now. And I experienced that as IBWC commissioner. It was the most stress that this agency has had, and a lot of it has to do with lack of infrastructure and in my humble opinion, the last president in Mexico did not really prioritize the U.S. relationship. And I'm still observing the new president right now. I'm still on the fence. So we'll see what happens. But I think that is a tool that society has as a stakeholder, for sure.
So we're going to take one more question, and again, invite you to continue the conversations, but let's have the last
Me
question.
presento, soy el Iván Álvarez, secretario de Recursos Hidráulicos del Gobierno de Tamaulipas. Pues he tratado prácticamente la propuesta de ustedes es arbitral.
No, amigo.
Bueno, se ha escuchado voz de la posibilidad, de hecho lo están haciendo. En este momento ustedes lo están proponiendo al decir que el sanción. Hay datos dramáticos. En este momento, de agua mexicana, para cumplir con los compromisos que se tienen en favor de Tamaulipas, tenemos alrededor de 220 millones de metros cúbicos. Requerimos 1.500. 1.500. Entonces, eso habla de una situación dramática para el estado de Tamaulipas. Si en este momento hacemos la planeación que ya se está haciendo, el distrito de riego más importante del noreste del país, el Cerro del Chico, se queda sin gota de agua. Iba a decir por enésima ocasión, pero la verdad es que en los últimos 30 años, solo cuando el huracán Alex nos llenó las fronteras internacionales, tuvo un plan de riegos no. Desde hace 30 años sufre de carencias continuas, año tras año. Y esto viene de una política errada al interior del país. Una sobreconcesión del río Bravo, que no escurre agua, como sucedió durante los primeros 50 años del tratado. El tratado se cumplió puntualmente, pero luego decretos de facilidades administrativas en México que le dio opción a toda la gente a tener un título de posesión, se sobreexplotó la cuenca, no respetando incluso que es una cuenca nacional. La pregunta es, porque ahora me va a cortar el tiempo. El río Bravo lo dividimos en 37 tramos, todos sobreconcesionados y sobreexplotados, todos. Al grado que a nivel presa Falcón tenemos 500 millones de metros cúbicos de déficit. No se puede cumplir. Y en la cuenca de San Juan, a la que ustedes han estado haciendo alusión, los estudios de disponibilidad publicados por la Comisión Nacional del Agua establecen un déficit de 250 millones de metros cúbicos. Entonces, ¿cómo pensar que se pudiera acreditar, esa es la pregunta, agua de San Juan cuando tenemos un déficit para el consumo de los mexicanos? Yo entendería que si hubiera disponibilidad, por supuesto, este sería un factor a favor del cumplimiento del tratado. Eso sería de dónde sacar.
Okay, gentleman is 100% correct. I'll just clarify one thing. There was a statement made that the San Juan is not authorized to be utilized. It is. Under Article 9, it can be utilized, but in every other respect, the gentleman is 100% correct. In 1992, Mexico changed the way it allocated water. And it resulted in exactly what the gentleman has said, an over-appropriation in the entire portion of the Mexican basin. It is not an accident that we saw one of the worst deficits starting in 1992. That linkage exists. The San Juan can be a useful tool because it allows for waters to flow to Los Angeles that can be utilized by both countries, where only a portion of the delivery could be targeted for uses. But I'm gonna go beyond that. One of the things that we always discussed when I was Water Master and then Commissioner is that whatever is good for Texas should be good for Tamaulipas. And whatever is good for Tamaulipas will be good for Texas. And somewhere that has been lost. I thank you for your comments.
And with that,
Yes.
we do need to come to an end. Thank you. Carlos, is there anything else that you would like to address before we close this panel?
One, thank you again to the Water Foundation and to all of you for attending. Again, this is phenomenal that we're having these level of discussions. Thank you to the panelists. We all get along great, as you can tell. Sorry that Mario couldn't be with us. It would have been a lot of fun, I promise you, but one special recognition. If you think we were prepared for these questions and we enjoy being up here in the panel, there is one gentleman we need to thank, and that's Colin over there.
Yes.
Yeah. Colin corralled us. One, he talked us into doing this, which was not a heavy lift, because as you can tell, we all like to talk. But he really honed on what he thought and we felt would be good questions to cover to promote additional discussion. Could not have happened without Colin. So Colin, on behalf of the panelists, thank you very much.
So we're going to have our panelists stay here for one moment, because before we break and we do a final thank you, I have 3 housekeeping announcements for you. The first is, if you are a speaker, if you're speaking at any point during this presentation, we're going to take a group photo in the patio where we had the reception last night. So when you leave here, before you get food, there's going to be food just outside. You're going to be welcome to get food in the buffet line and come back here. Come join us first. Let's take a photo, and then everybody can have lunch. The second thing is, if you're using an interpretation headset, turn it off. Take a look at it, look down at it. You see the button? You're going to turn it off in a moment so we save the battery. And then the third thing is, I want to know what an angry surfer looks like.
Pretty much the same as someone that goes scuba diving with sharks.
We will talk more about that at lunch. Join me in thanking this wonderful panel. Thank you for your candid thoughts.